Ladies and gentlemen, it is pro wrestling's giant personality, the height of independent wrestling, Mr. Larger Than Life, big time Ethan Higher, and you're watching the Final Count podcast.
This is Mega Mondo, and you're Mega listening and Mega watching the Final Count podcast. Yeah!
Welcome to the Final Count Spotlight. Here's your host, Ryan Mosley.
Hello, everybody. It is the crop rockin', nickelback poppin', curls for all the girls, the Terminator, Sam Beal, as seen on Impact Wrestling, and you are listening to the Final Count.
Hey everybody, Anthony Corelli here, formerly known as Santino Morella, and you are listening to the Final Count.
Hey, it's Eric Ortiz, voice of the Valley from OVW, and you're checking out the Final Count. Citizens, this is Super Z, and you're watching the Final Count.
That is right. It is that time again. It is time for the Final Count Spotlight. And on this episode of the Final Count Spotlight, I am joined by my guest, who is someone I grew up watching, actually. During her time in Ohio Valley Wrestling, WWE Developmental at the time. And she is none other than my first ever former WWE Women's star to ever be on the podcast. So this is a huge thing for me. She is former WWE star and TNA knockout, Shelly Martinez. Shelly, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. This is, like I said, it's a huge thing for me to be able to interview you. I grew up, I was about preteen, something like that, when I saw you in OVW back in like 2005, 2006-ish. I say this all the time. I've grown up, or I started going to OVW shows live each and every Wednesday back in the day, starting October of 2004. And even still go to OVW shows today. And so it's really cool to have you on. I'm happy to have you here.
The timing couldn't be better because I've been really revisiting my OVW roots. I even just watched, I know it's a couple years old, that Netflix Wrestlers documentary about OVW. Here's the thing. I am because I've been retired from wrestling since 2017, and then I stopped even doing conventions in 2018. So I'm really out of the loop, and my life's just crazy. So I just don't pay attention. So I had no idea OVW was in such bad shape at that time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, dude. So this couldn't be at the better time, because I'm going to tell you something. And this makes me so happy that this is your connection to me, is OVW. Yes. I just finished Wrestlers last week because it took me a while to watch it. And it really effed me up. Like, it really... Okay, first there was the seeing just the sign, which to you is probably just normal. But for me, being out of the loop, being out of the scene for so long, haven't been there for so long, right? And seeing that out loud, I was on my little walking pad when I was watching it, and I was out loud. I said, "There's that effing sign, man!" And yes. I had like those moments, whether it was the sign where it's like right where the door is, or the one where it's on Shepherd's Road. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called, right? Shepherd's Road.
Shepherdsville Road.
Yeah, yeah, Shepherdsville Road. Mm-hmm. So those two signs, it's like for a while that was my everyday almost. Like, turn right in there, like there you go. And so there was little things like that. But then there was moments where, especially in the arena, same thing when Al's doing the meetings, exact same spot that we used to do it back in the day. And so I was like, out loud, I was like, oh my gosh, there's the freaking stands right there. Oh my goodness. And so then I connected with, man, I left some of my energy there, man. I could feel it by watching this and being, even though this has nothing to do with me right now, it's still OVW, and that energy And so that tripped me out. And then getting into the stories of each quote unquote character in
Yes.
the show really affected me on different levels. Like whether it was Al, who I really credit from making me the worker that I became, you know, and understanding how to work it, brother, sister, to freaking when Matt Jones has a seizure. I have a family member that it's only happened twice. They've passed out.
Mhm.
And that pulled at my heart. And so that messed me up. And then like seeing the parallels of being a contracted wrestler back in the day, one of the things that I kind of said to myself was it's almost like these people who came in, Matt and the other guy, I'm so sorry, I forget his name. They're like the new office from when I was in contracted of WWE in a way. It's like these
Mhm.
people who like they come at that time they would be talking to like Al and Danny and you know at one time Paul Heyman before ECW started. So
Right.
it's like that dynamic and how like the boys are with that relationship and this that and the other. So that was interesting. So it was like the new meeting like the nostalgic that I lived. And then I was so impressed with the way they shot and edited it. Whoever did it, shout out to you. Because as a wrestler, this is just me. My experience in wrestling, especially in that damn Danny Davis arena, um, the way the matches look, that's how it looks to me as the wrestler when I'm in the ring or if
Mhm.
I'm ringside because I'm the manager or whatever. So
Yeah.
they captured, I'm getting chills right now. Like even WWE doesn't do that. Like WWE, it's like, okay, that's the look. That's their look. TNA, that's their look. AEW, that's their look. Now NWA, that's their look. But this documentary, as me being an effing alumni of that place and a professional wrestler, I was so impressed that it triggered me of like, damn it, that's how I see it, how the lighting is. And when people hit, like, even though like they kind of slowed it down a bit, in my head when it's happening, it seems kind of like in the slow motion. And
Yeah.
like the crowd, oh God, I can cry. And then like the crowd and like, oh my gosh, it's just like too much. So I messed up from that freaking wrestlers.
I get it because like this just the nostalgia of it, and even though I still go to the shows, it's still like the changes of like the sign that you were talking about. As you walk in the door, that's even changed even since the wrestlers, and
Oh.
like they have a new name for the arena. It's still Davis Arena, but it's called Hot Point Davis Arena now, and because of the sponsorship and everything, and so it's just like the nostalgia of it. I get it totally. Like I'm like I've became close through the podcast with so many, like Chris Cage, Tank Tolan, just a few friends of mine since doing this podcast. And then also through social media and things like that too. But I won't go into that. But like just through this podcast, I've always called OVW family, and that's what I feel like OVW is. Whether you're a wrestler, alumni, whether you're there now or you're an alumni or just a fan, even it's a whole family. Past, present, future, it's a family.
Well, I always say it was like my college, like how people
Mhm.
have their college years. That for me was, OVW years, and then maybe towards the end of my college years was WWE and TNA. But the meat of it was my experience in and out of the ring at OVW and everything that I gained and being that kind of reckless gal back in the day because I was young and I grew up real sheltered. So that was my college. Like I said, like I grew up in a very strict religious household. And it's so funny because let me tell you something. This is something that is so new to me. And you'll probably be like, what? Because I'm like, what? So when I was doing specifically my Ariel character, this goes for
Mhm.
Salinas as well, but specifically Ariel, it was very sexual, as we all know. It's no, it's no surprise there. And when I was doing it in my head, I wasn't like, I'm gonna be this sexy vampire. I just pulled my inspirations, put them together, and was portraying this character that was asked of me that was freaking awesome because I was legit into all of it. So, like vampires and things like that. And so I fit the mold, and it wasn't until a couple years ago when I watched back some stuff, I was like, whoa, dude, I look real sexual. Like when people would bring up the Joey Styles lap dance, I would roll my eyes and be like, what's the big deal? Like it's so what? And like it was a
Right.
rib. Freaking Tony Gurria in the back was like, before I went out, he goes, hey, as a rib, really give it to Joey Styles. Like give him a good lap dance. Okay. And I was like, all right. And so when I went out there and did it, I just did what Ariel would do.
Mhm.
So fast forward a couple years ago, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to watch this thing. Everyone makes such a big deal out of it. Like, who cares, dude? That was so long ago. Like, what's the big deal? So I watched it and I went, oh, that's the big deal. And I remember I came to the back and Tony Gurria and Dean Malenko were laughing so hard. And at that time, I didn't know what the big deal was. I was like, what's the big deal? I didn't realize, dude, but maybe that was part of the magic that was my character, whether it was my OVW characters, which somebody watching OVW in my heyday there. There's lots of Ariel that was already there. Like like with Aaron and Beth, there's a lot of things in there that when you watched Ariel, you're probably like, oh, that makes total sense. That's how Shelly is out there in the ring, like whatever.
Yes.
So it's just so interesting to me because I always wonder why my family was so weird to me about my wrestling, dude. And I was like, I went out. I said everyone said I was crazy when I said I was going to go be a wrestler. I went and did it. I'm now with the biggest company, the company where I said I was going to go work. I didn't understand it. But now looking back, going back to that religious background I was talking about, oh, because they were going to church and other people were watching me, but they all didn't want to talk about that they were watching me because I was over there looking like sin.
Wow.
So it all made sense. But it's so interesting to me because I didn't realize that's how I was coming off at all. And then it made sense to me why I really got no direction when I was Ariel, because they were probably like, she's just doing exactly, if not more, what we want.
What we want.
And it's just interesting because I feel if I was more aware of it then, the magic of that would have been lost. That's what I really feel. I was supposed to be naive to it. Even though it got me in trouble a time or two, I was supposed to be naive to that sexual energy I was throwing out there because I would have overthought it, brother.
Right. I get that for sure. I understand completely. And like, yeah, looking back, I can see, where Shelly, as you were in OVW, I can see where you had that, and like that was just you, it was just you, and adding that into Ariel. Let's talk about, so when you first, started watching wrestling, what was that moment that made you decide to get into the pro wrestling business?
Forever, I've always said this was my story, my pitch, okay? My story always has been, I say pitch because, I've done so many interviews pre-WWE and then after. So it's like a story now, right? And my story always went that when I was little and I saw Cyndi Lauper getting involved in wrestling, that was my thing because I love Cyndi Lauper. And that is true, to be honest. It's very, very true. And then as the story continues to go, then I lost track because I would get distracted, especially with boys. And so the Attitude Era is when it really all made sense for me. And when that's when I was like, I knew I was going to be this wrestler. So let's back up a little bit. Now that I've had more time to like reflect back and dissect everything of my journey in wrestling, especially, it didn't just start with Cyndi Lauper. You know where it also started? It was freaking Glow Wrestling, man. Like I grew up in a very toxic environment, and those women not only gave me an escape, but because it was all women and they were doing acting, and then not only that, like real campy stuff. And I mean, I guess WWE or F was at the time too, but it was more males. So this was where I was really introduced to a bunch of women. And like, I just remember looking at them with stars in my eyes, all of them, all the characters and everything. And I've always been a person that I've loved old school kind of comedy, vaudeville, if you will. So it kind of reminded me of that versus WWE. it was different, you know. It was or WF, it was different. It was a different vibe. Still got that good cheesy element to it. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't quite with what an all woman cast can portray it, right? So then it was really awesome because you would see them on like Married with Children, or you would see them on Roseanne. So it's like, to me, it showed like, see, they're wrestlers, but then not only that, like they go on shows. Like it just seemed like so cool. And so these women molded this idea of how you can be a model and an actress and a wrestler. And I just thought it was so amazing. And marry that with Cyndi Lauper, because that story is true. And then something that I didn't really think about until not that long ago. Bubba Dudley had made some post about a match. It was, he said, before tables and ladders and chairs matches existed, this was it. So it was like that first big one.
Mm.
And so it was the Dudleys versus the Hardys versus Edge and Christian.
Yes.
And it was in Anaheim, California. And I remembered, because when he put it out there, because he said Anaheim, California, I was like, wait a minute. And it triggered me. And so I watched the clip he put out, and oh my God, it all came back to me. So when I was in like later in high school and then after high school a little bit, I had these friends and we would always get together. We did everything wrestling. We'd go to like the cons if they're around, like if WWE was in town, we would go to the Fan Fest, whatever. So we couldn't get tickets to that show at the pond. So we were watching it, and I remembered, that's when it came to me like that. I remember sitting in the living room of my friend's house at the time, and everyone was going nuts because that freaking match is crazy if you go back and watch it. And again, this is before everyone was doing all the stuff that they're doing now on the regular. Like this was these men, and I just remember these moments. I was like, oh my God, I remember this. And I just remember the room erupting. But for the first time, because I love getting into it, so usually I'm right there being like, yeah, I just love that feeling. But I remember I was real quiet, and I was just like watching it. And in my gut, because I had been talking about for so long how I was going to be a wrestler, but I didn't know how, because this is the I started the business in the year 2000. So the late 90s. Here on the West Coast, the independent wrestling circuit, unless you're a lucha, it wasn't really present here. So it wasn't like on the Midwest, the East Coast, or even other countries where indie wrestling's very kind of common knowledge within certain towns or whatever. Especially if you're somebody that's looking for wrestling, you know what I mean? You find it. Whereas here, it was just really, at that time, WCW and WWE. And then there was XPW if you wanted to go that route. So I didn't know how, man. But when I watched that match and I watched those men and what they did, I wanted to make fans feel like that. I'm not saying that I wanted to have a match like them, but how the fans were so invested. And the fans were feeding the wrestlers, and the wrestlers were feeding the freaking fans. And it's like, I was like so drawn in, and I was like, in my gut, I knew that's what I am supposed to freaking do. How am I going to do this? And so then that's when I just would blab to everyone I could. I loved wrestling. At this point, I was out of high school and I was doing the whole modeling acting thing. And that's where I used my voice of just being psychotic about it, because I had seen an interview that Courtney Love had done, and it was about her trying to be Nancy in the Sid and Nancy movie back in the 80s with Gary Oldman. So she was talking about how she would send in self-taped things saying, I'm supposed to be like Nancy, da da da. And so I really took that approach to my wrestling career, and people thought I was nuts. They're like, Shelly's out of her mind. She thinks that she's going to be this wrestler and she's going to go to WWF. Yeah, right. And I was like, watch, I'm going to. And I was just very aggressive about it. And then that's when an independent film used some local wrestlers on their movie, and I got cast as one of their girlfriends. And that's when I got introduced finally to some local wrestling. So that's the journey that had happened. And I want to start throwing out there that freaking post that Bubba made, because I'm so happy that I was able to piece together all of that, especially because of the timeline in my life right now and the things I'm going through. I needed to be reminded of that moment when everyone was going nuts and I was just watching them. And I just remember freaking the two things that stand out the most is when Jeff does the dive onto Bubba when he goes up to the I was just like whole like
Yes.
whoa. And I just remember looking at those dudes and I was like, I want to do that. I have to do that. Like, it wasn't I want to, it was how do I get there? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. How do I get there? And then the next moment that affected me the most was when Matt was right about to get it. He was right about to get it. And then here comes freaking Edge. And he knocks him at, like, he even touches it. And it, like, you see the belt go, and then he falls into a table. He could have just kicked him up, but no, into a table. And that's when I was like, that's the kind of, at the time I didn't know about heels and baby faces. In my head, I was like, I want to be the kind of badass that Bubba was, but I also want to be that asshole that just kicked Matt Hardy off and stole the belt. That's what I want to do. I want to be that.
And
And this is a new revolution. So
yeah,
what better here with my fellow Kentuckian? I feel like I'm a honorary Kentuckian.
you are. I agree. You are. It's official.
Yeah.
And so you talk about Cyndi Lauper and then Bubba Ray with you said it was it a tweet he put out or
Yeah, he put out a tweet, and it was because it was the anniversary of that. It was back in April. It was the anniversary of that pay-per-view. And yeah, so like, and the thing is when I think about it, at the time it was called the Pond, the Anaheim Pond. I will always call it the Anaheim Pond. Come at me, I do not care. It is the Pond, long live. There's certain WWF events that had happened there that I hold to me, but I forgot about that one. I forgot I forgot about that whole, it's almost like I blacked it out. And I think the reason why is those friends, none of them talk to me anymore. And when I went to WWE and then I came back, that's when everything changed. And it sucked because that's when I needed those homies that we used to watch pay-per-views and like this, that, and the other. And they'd always say, because they used to go to like film school and stuff like that. So the dream was we wanted to be like Adam Sandler, how he always works with his friends. So they were always like, Shelly's going to go off and be in WWE one day, and then we're gonna create and and then we're gonna make. We used to do films together. I used to be in their student films with them, the whole 9 yards. So it was a deep thing. So when I got the boot from WWE, which was like such a low blow because it wasn't because of me messing up at work, it was just me running my mouth. I needed those homies the most, man. And it wasn't like I went off to WWF and like forgot about them. I used to have this schedule that on Mondays, no matter what, I had one of those sidekick T-Mobile phones. I would text or email my closest friends to make sure I was checking in with them. So I bring that up, not to be like, I'm so great, but that I was going out of my way. It wasn't like I went and changed, on TV and now I'm changed, whatever. When I was in TNA, we were on a bowling team together. I kept it real, man. I kept it real. If they ever see this, I kept it real. And they did not. And so I feel I blocked out certain moments that happened like that because I felt so butthurt when I felt deserted and abandoned by them. And so it was really cool to get back that moment, because that moment had nothing to do with them. They just housed the situation. That moment had to do with me and my destiny and who the F I was supposed to be, with or without those fools. So it was an empowering thing for me to revisit that and re-feel those feelings, watching that clip that Bubba put out there and remembering it and just being like, yeah, bitch, like I did it, dude. And you know, the sad part is, it's not like they're, oh, you could say they're jealous because they did. No, they're out there and they have jobs, some of them, good jobs with productions, because they went and did the damn thing too. They didn't keep their part of the bargain. I did. So whatever, man.
You made it where you said you was going to go. Yeah, exactly. So with inspirations when you were watching wrestling growing up, did you, and watching that match, you know, with the Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian, watching Cyndi Lauper, who would you say they were your inspirations? And then watching
Well, you
Glow as
know,
well.
there was women that it wasn't like I wanted to be them or be like their characters,
Mhm.
much like those women did in Glow. They just inspired me as a woman, period. And those people growing up or in that attitude era definitely was Lita, Trish Stratus, especially because seeing Trish Stratus come in and look like she could be Pamela Anderson's sister and like go out there, and then she became this like wrestler, and then she became like this real wrestler, and like it's like almost, not that the beginning never happened, but people tend to forget because she made such a career out of herself of being a respected and, you know, worker.
Mhm.
So, but if we're going back into time in the wrestling ring, time travel over here, um, at that time, it went back to, she was really pulling at my strings because all the shoots that she was doing and stuff like that. And then Lita, I just felt like I had a lot in common with. And then at the same time, she was doing really awesome shoots, especially when I started getting tattoos. I felt like Lita gave me permission that I can get tattoos in my head because it's okay. Because at that time, especially in modeling, people frowned upon tattoos because they don't want to like Photoshop them out or whatever. It wasn't a thing. And then here I was slowly getting tattoos, and I really felt like Lita gave me permission because there she was doing her damn thing and she had tattoos, so that's fine. And so gals like that, Stacy Keebler, freaking Tori Wilson, you know, who else? I miss like all the divas, man. Like in that era, they just really, freaking Terry Reynolds, they just kicked ass, man. Like it was almost like in a way, what I experienced when I went to TNA with the knockouts and like that beginning stages, how everyone was like just a different character. And I don't know, it was just really awesome. So seeing those women out there, you know, just their characters, and I just loved it. And I loved how believable freaking China. Oh my gosh, freaking China. Are you kidding me? Freaking China. Like these are just women that I was just, they gave me that same energy that when I was little, because you know, I'm like young adult during Attitude Era. But when I was a kid, these ladies all were giving me my fix that Glow was giving me back in that day. So, and they also made me feel, and you know, even go to people like Nydia. How good was Nydia?
Yes.
Like, and here's what's crazy. She was so, first of all, you know, I was obsessed with the Tough Enoughs, and I was in one actually. And so obsessed with the Tough Enoughs. And then when Nydia was on it, I don't know, there was just something about her. And then fast forward, I remember the first time I ever got looked at by WWE, Melina, who I started with, she had already been getting looked at for a while, and she'd been going to the shows for a while. Well, for me, this was my first time, and I'll never forget, Nydia was right there, and she asked Melina, have they hired you yet? And then later that night, they hired her. So I knew I just needed to keep pushing forward like Melina did and hustle. And when Nydia one day tells me, "Have they hired you yet?" I know I'm close. And then I had my moment. Fast forward a year later, Nydia said, "Have they hired you yet?" And I was like, "Yes, dude." I'm not saying that I got hired on that spot, but I remember Johnny Ace pulling me aside and he was like, had to talk with me. And he was like, "Look, you do these couple things, that's what's going to get you hired." I was like, "Okay." And then the next time I saw them, I did those couple things, and that's what I got hired. Now, no, I know that sounds shady. No, but I guess your next question probably was a couple things. One of the main things was he told me that I needed to lose 15 pounds. And I know some people, and that's why I just say a couple things. But here's the thing, I did. Because him saying that, some people could say, "Oh, he's body shaming you," whatever. But I'm a very petite gal. And I remember and I know people are going to take this wrong, but don't. He said, "You have such a beautiful face. You just need to lose like 15 pounds." And I knew not to like boo-hoo about it. I was like, he's absolutely right. And I'm going to, if that's all it takes, yeah, I'm going to lose that 15 pounds because I don't want these 15 pounds. Now, when I had that on me, I had gained weight because in my private life, I was living in a very toxic situation. I was depressed. I wasn't moving around enough. I was not doing what I need to do. And I wasn't feeling good, which then made me do all those things more. So not only did I get hired after I dropped that weight, and by the way, I only lost 10 when they saw me next. So I didn't even lose the full 15. I think they just wanted to see that I was going down that path. So when I got to OVW, I was at that weight of losing 15 pounds. And you know what I'm here to tell you? My joints didn't hurt as much. I wasn't struggling with my mental health as much. So I don't want people to think him telling me that was a bad thing. Now, if I was like 125 pounds and he's like, "You need to lose 5 pounds," that's an asshole move. 125 pounds is good enough. That's, but I wasn't at that time. And he saw value if I put more effort. And for me, it wasn't about, "Oh, I'm going to go binge or starve myself." It was, I got to get myself right and healthy and start, and that boosted me. It helped me to aim for something and be like, "Yeah, dude, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this." And I did. And like I said, I didn't even meet the quota, but they were very happy. They were like, "Wow, you look great." And I remember Molly Holly goes, because I was insecure. I was like, "Dude, I didn't meet the 15 pounds, right?" That, like, great. Great. I was defeated. And I remember Molly Holly, she goes, "What's up, lean and mean?" And I was like, I almost took a bump. I was like, okay, maybe it's not that bad. And, I feel like I didn't get hired on the spot, but a couple months later, I got a call from Dreamer. And then a few months later, I got to OVW. So I just want to throw it out there because, look, I understand like when people, I get it. But as much as I understand and everybody's situation's different, I feel that's why I sugar coated it a little bit ago, saying a couple things, because I feel I can't talk about this because people always say, "But you're fine." And it's like, but I didn't feel fine, And I was just thinking about that moment because I've been dealing with health issues for years now, and I'm finally getting back on track. It effed me up. And recently I've been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm finally at that weight where I thought I wasn't lean and mean, but Molly Holly said I was lean and mean." And so I recently had this personal, so I'm glad that it organically came up here because you never know who's listening, especially if there's other wrestlers out there or whatever. It's not about aesthetic. It's about just taking care of yourself. And I feel that these wrestlers that are haphazard with their health, being a wrestler, it's already haphazard. We are voluntarily throwing ourselves around, being whatever. Our brains are being jarred. Take care of yourselves out there. Listen to grizzled Aunt Shelly over here, people. Take care of yourselves.
That's good advice. I mean, yeah, and exactly like you talk about, like people tell you, well, you look fine, but it's have to be, how you feel. You know what I'm saying? And so like you have to go by how you feel too.
Absolutely.
But
That's what it's all about. This is
yeah.
the thing. Life is about, we're going to get deep here. We're going to get deep here on the final count.
Yeah.
Something that I wish I would have realized way sooner, even though maybe I had moments of understanding this, I didn't truly embrace it because I didn't really understand. You got to feel good no matter what you're doing, whatever decisions you make, whatever situations you're in. Now, I know we can't 100% operate on that level, but at the end of the day, I'm talking about. And that goes just for so much, whether it's mental health, whether it's physical health, whether it's a work situation, whether it's in relationships, whether it's, romance or not. It's like you got to feel good. And that's where it gets hard because sometimes in order to feel good, you got to go through a lot of shit and it doesn't feel good. And that's where we kind of get stuck. And it's so effing hard. And I've been stuck so many different times in my life in that vibration that when I find myself having those moments now, at least I recognize that what can I do in the moment that's going to best serve me and make me feel better? Not like a temporary, like, oh, let me go get drunk because I'll feel better.
Yeah.
It sounds like attractive. Yes, let's put a Band-Aid on it. Especially if you're a drinker like me. I'm a drinker. Pause for a second on the other. If you're a drinker like me, I'm the type where I'm not trying to run from my problem, but just give me a second to take a shot real quick so I can just like digest it for a sec. And even that can get toxic and you can overdo it. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like, I've been so stuck in that. And then there's that self-sabotage that happens. And I feel like not just in my experience, but seeing other people too, that's the struggle. That's where we get lost. And so it's like not reaching for the quick fixes or the Band-Aids or whatever. It's like, for example, when my anxiety or depression is creeping up, or I'm just like having not good energy and thoughts, I'm like, maybe I just need to go outside. That'll make me feel better. Takes no energy. Even better a walk, but sometimes you're struggling so much you don't even want to go for a walk. So like, I don't have to talk to nobody. I don't have to see anybody. Maybe I just need to go outside for a second. That's something that'll make you feel better. And it doesn't take away the problem or whatever, but all of a sudden, at least I feel a little better. Like things like that. And I didn't realize how important it was. I always feel like, oh, okay, this is XYZ is happening. So what do I got to do to fix it? Or, oh, I can't fix it. I don't even understand what the problem is. And da da da. And it's like, dude, man, my blood pressure and like it doesn't need that. It just doesn't need that. So that's my other advice to all of you listeners, watchers out there is something I really wish I understood that before, because even though it's still a journey and you work on it every day and every situation's different, just having that in the back of your mind just serves you so much more. And going back to, okay, it's wrestling. I wish in my wrestling career, I could have had more moments like that, because when I went back to the indies after I took some time off and went back, and that's really where most of my career was, I was able to have that attitude for a good portion of it. And my relationship with wrestling, even though there was shittiness around me, was still good. My matches and the people that I was connecting with, whether it was my opponents or the fans or people in the locker room or my little caretaker for the weekend, whatever, like real cool life moments were happening. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing, because then when shit hit the fan, I went back and got bitter and angry and just closed off. And so I got stuck in that, and it affected my health, man. Talking about that, like I landed myself in the hospital, had to have an emergency surgery. I almost died. And then get this. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I almost die, right? I make a post about it on Instagram because I'm an idiot. And you know why? I make a post about it because I'm worried that my members of my secret society, my exclusive content, are going to start unsubscribing to me because I hadn't post content for the week. This is the delusion where I was at. So I post that I almost died. And then I get and people were cool about it, whatever. And then, it worked out because people that care about me, that know me in real life, like, were hitting me up, whatever. I was able to let them know what was going on. And then I get requests from these pervs out there. They're in their fetishes, and they're like, if you're in the hospital and you have your hospital gown on, how much would it be if you could do a video, bro? And I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now?
Right.
My post said I almost died. And this is what you think, which I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad I did it because, one of those things, like, it's kind of cool. I mean, silver lining, because you don't want to land yourself in the hospital. But it's nice to know that when push comes to shove, people maybe you haven't heard from, maybe you feel like maybe they kind of blow you off. When something serious happens, they're showing up. So that was good energy. So I don't take back that I posted the video. But already my mind was, is my money going to get affected because I'm in the hospital, which I almost just died, by the way. And then these perverts asking for custom content. I can't. And so that put me in a really bad mood for a long time. So I got stuck again but now I'm unstuck, and I just am excited to be on different people's podcasts because I feel I've been stuck for so long that when I've done other interviews in the past, when I was in it all, my story was different. The energy of it was different. Now I feel like my story, even though like some of it's like the meat of it's the same, the filler is the side dishes, if you will, are so much more dense and full of nutrients. And I really want to share that. And I wouldn't have gone through all that unless I got unstuck. And that's why I keep kind of going back to like this, trying to give Shelly's old advice over here, because I don't really feel that people, at least I don't really see people, especially in wrestling, talking about that side, especially life after wrestling is really effing hard. It's really effing hard. And it's so hard that people don't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it for a long time, but the reason why I did was because I have my secret society. Shout out to my secret society members. I have my secret society, and they have always been there for me. And that's a blessing. And not every person that's been in the business, especially us women in the business, it's really rough. I know it looks like we're the main event sometimes, but we don't get treated that way a lot of the times, especially back in my day. So I just really feel that my place in wrestling right now is to share this now unstuck version of myself in the most raw way I can, to not just help whoever's listening, but specifically women in wrestling and males too. Don't get me wrong, but specifically women in wrestling, because it's such a hard thing to talk about, this whole trying to figure out. And then the men, I really feel for, because I know I've talked to some dudes and they're like, I don't know anything else. I'm not a hot chick. What am I going to do? No chick's going to want me. I seem like they said, I was going to say seem, but because they're not a loser, but this dude was like, I'm a loser. And I'm like, oh, no. So, it's hard, man. It's hard. And I'll be the guinea pig for sure. I have no problem. I've been running my mouth my whole wrestling career, getting myself in trouble. Why stop now?
But see, I think you're at a point, like on the outside looking in, just from hearing you talk. I feel like it's you could have stayed stuck. You know what I'm saying? You could have chose to stay stuck, but you chose to get yourself unstuck. And it's the point is, I feel like you don't stay at a point where you're staying stuck. You're like, yeah, you realize you were stuck, but you don't stay stuck. You get yourself unstuck, and you let your journey, your story, because you have a story to share now. Look where I've come from. Basically, look where Shelly has come from, and so that's what I feel like you are now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and it's also okay to get stuck. You have to. That's the only way. Here's the thing. I just said this on my podcast that I have with my homeboy Stoner Jesus. Shout out to him, Shelly and Stoner Jesus Smokeout. Go to sjsmokeout.com and check it out. I was just talking about, it's like, I was on the Dog Whisperer with my dogs, Fred and Ethel Mertz. God rest their souls. And one of the things that Caesar Milan said to me was because my whole anxiety at the time, my boy dog, Fred, he was kind of getting on in his years, so my whole anxiety was one day he's going to pass. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it, because when I first got Fred, it was when I first started the wrestling business, and I had just the wrestling business. When I started going to training and everything, it empowered me so much that I was finally able to escape a relationship I was in. I say escape because it was very abusive mentally and physically. This is a guy I dated in my high school years, bleeding on into my early adulthood. And it gave me the balls to finally leave, stand up to him and leave and protect myself. When the last time he hit me, I was able to totally protect myself because I learned from wrestling. So one of the things that I did when I found that confidence and was whatever, I wanted something to love me no matter what. So I was like, I got to get a dog. So that's when I got little Fred Mertz. So for me, fast forward, when I was on Dog Whisperer, I think he was about 9 or 10 years old. That anxiety was creeping up, and I didn't know how it was going to be because he was with me for such a gnarly time in my life, And that's when Caesar looked at me and he said, the only way out is you have to go in. And he's like, you have to go and feel all those emotions. You feel the whatever. And then once you can let all that go, that's how you can get out. And I always kept that with me. I have an 8x10 that he gave me, that he signed, and that's what he wrote on there. And I always tuck that away with me whenever I felt stuck and I'm about to move forward and get unstuck. That always helped me realize it's okay I felt all this, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have come to this conclusion. And that's the other thing I hate about, in general, people. I know they're trying to be nice, like when people are venting or whatever, and they're like, oh, you can't feel that way. You can't. What do you mean? I wish there's a button. You have a switch? Because I would love to not give a shit right now. You got a switch, a no, I don't give a shit switch, because it's not that easy, especially if you have trauma. We all respond to trauma differently. So you can't, person over here who has great intent, might love the hell out of you and just be your BFF, could be telling you that, and they don't understand, but it's like, because they don't understand you and how you deal with things. And so it's important. And I love that Caesar confirmed it for me. You gotta go through it, dude. You gotta go through it. And when people will tell me, you can't let that bother you, I'm like, why? And then eventually, after I'm not mad anymore and I go through all the stages, and let's say someone screwed me over, and then I can finally forgive them without them asking for it. Wow, where I'm at, I'm real unstuck now. But I had to be mad at them because I was disappointed and hurt. And then I got even more mad because, let's say, they didn't take accountability. So what do you want me to do? Be like, oh, it's okay. No, bitch. No.
Right. Exactly.
And then I go and create boundaries, and now I'm the bitch. Okay, cool. Who's the bitch? And now you get even more mad. And then you realize, oh, when I created those boundaries, that was starting to help me get unstuck. Oh, okay. That was doing something like what I was talking about earlier that's going to make me feel better. Maybe at the time it didn't, but whatever. And then this whole thing. And so I really wish I could have understood that a little bit faster. I wish. I mean, it would have probably changed everything in my life. I'm a butterfly effect person. Like, you can't, so I can't change anything, but that's why I want to share what I've learned, because if like a 20-something-year-old girl out there that's wrestling can hear this, and even if she's going to be reckless, she could tuck it in the back of her head, I'm all for it, because it would have been so powerful for me and how I handled myself, my energy, and did business in the wrestling world if I fully understood all that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm a very, if I'm mad, I'm mad. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. And so I'm a little haphazard with my emotions when I was in my younger days. And so that's my other advice out there. I'm like, there's a couple gals out there that I'm really hoping, God willing, this podcast will reach their ears. Just saying.
Definitely. I hope so too, for sure. And And I love all this advice that you're giving for sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what was it like working with in your time in OVW with Beth Phoenix and Aaron the Idol Stevens.
You know what? It was so freaking awesome. Going back to, it was like my college years. They were like my freaking college buddies, you know what I mean? Especially Aaron. I'd get in trouble with him all the time. There was a time we lived at Nova's house. Nova didn't live there at the time. He was renting it out because he was office at the time. Freaking Nova office. And it was me, Santino Morella. So that's why I popped huge when I saw the little intro. Oh, Santino. And Aaron, we lived in this house. And little George, of course, was there. And we had John Bolin. You remember John Bolin?
Yes.
John Bolin. He would sleep on our couch sometimes, or a lot of the times. He didn't live there. He was an unofficial roommate. And I remember Nova. He was like, "You and Aaron are always just up to something. You guys were just always up to something," and we were. We were. And so, yeah, we worked with each other in the ring. Yeah, whatever. But I think the reason why it was so much fun to work with each other in the ring was because in real life, we're out there getting in trouble together and causing trouble and mischief and mayhem. So there's that. And then Beth kind of was like right there. Like I had more going with Aaron because like we were roommates and we lived together. And then before we lived together, we lived in the same apartment complex and he lived like in the same building even. So we were just always, so with Beth, she lived somewhere else. Her life was completely different at that time. So that's why I got into it more with Aaron. But Beth, I really needed that type of friendship at that time, especially because going back to Melina, at that time, she was freaking blowing up with Eminem.
Mhm.
So I barely got to really even hang out with Melina. So it's kind of like, and I always felt that my relationship with Melina from when we first started at, the wrestling school that we both started at to that point, I always felt like when I needed that extra whatever, she was my go-to. And so I kind of didn't know how to be without her. So it was so cool that life handed me Beth and they were friends. So I knew that she was, somebody that I can like let my guard down. Like that's not a total new person because Melina was really tight with her too. So I was like, okay, she's cool with Melina, tight with Melina, then it's only a matter of time before we get tight together. So there's that. And then there's just nothing like having the moments the three of us had, because there was this time, was it St. Therese? I think it was St. Therese or E-Town. Was it E-Town? Either the St. Therese or E-Town. We did a tar and feather match.
Yes.
Like wild. I had feathers in my hair for I don't even know how many days after that, but that was like so effing awesome. And having moments like that, or the pre-tapes that Paul Heyman had us doing, just I don't know, like my energy with Beth and Aaron, that summed up what I signed up for in wrestling. Like that's what I wanted. We were able to, sorry to say it, manipulate that audience so good, which is what the audience wants. You guys want us to manipulate you. So we were able to manipulate the audience and be conductors.
Mhm.
The three of us together, putting in our different talents into conducting that audience together. Audience ate it up, gave us that energy in return. And that was like a really special team. And a little spoiled, I was a little spoiled with it, but it showed me the kind of magic you can get with when you go messing around playing wrestling. You know what I mean? And I learned so much too, because both of them are such great wrestlers, great workers, that I was able to gain stuff from them. And working with Beth, and then when we turned on each other, I felt like the anxiety of is she gonna hurt me or whatever wasn't there. Because something I realized in the last like 8 or 9 years is when I first started wrestling, long story short, um, my first match that was a big match outside of Southern California, it was in Northern California. A girl was pissed off that I was late to the show that I was working. I was late to the show because this was like when you had to like go on MapQuest and print out where you're going. And so no GPS. I was late because I never have gone that far away from home on my own driving. So whatever, it is what it is. So we're going over the match while I'm getting ready and we're about to go next. And I'm so upset because I'm like, this is my debut at this company. This chick is already like very respected here. This is the match I want to do. And then she's mad at me. And I get it. I get why she's mad, but she doesn't understand what I had to go through to get here. And so I'm profusely apologizing profusely to this gal. She assured me everything was okay. I let it go. We go out there and she starts hooking me for things I wasn't sure what they were. So I was like, how do I tuck my chin? And she wouldn't say. And she was stiffing me. Okay, fine, whatever. But the stiffing part doesn't bother me so much. It's the giving me moves that I'd never in a day in my life at that point had I taken. And one of my biggest fears going into wrestling always had been, what if I accidentally kill myself because I mess up? Or what if I pass out? Those are the two things. I never wanted to pass out or, of course, die in the ring. So when that happened, I didn't realize, like I said, until like 8 or 9 years ago, I carried that anxiety with me with almost all of my matches. You'll never be able to tell by seeing me out there, but it was such a struggle. And I never understood why I would go through this whole thing to where there's times, dude, I've almost backed out of going out there. Like I've almost backed out because I was so freaked out. And I never understood where it was coming from. And then that's when I realized I was like, oh my gosh, I got traumatized from that experience. So going back to Beth, looking back, Beth was one of the standout first people that I had worked that I felt I didn't have to worry about that with because of what we had built already with that group we were in. Because by the time we turned on each other, we already had been tight and in real life and in the ring. So I felt like I could just be a damn wrestler and not be all going through the whole thing of what I got to do. And at that time, I didn't use cannabis. Whereas later in my career, that's when I started using cannabis to help me with that. And so I had to just truck on through it and it sucked. There's times people don't know this. Back in the day when I would get triggered and didn't know that's what it was, I would go in the bathroom sometimes and lay on the floor hyperventilating and I didn't understand why. I didn't know why. And then when it all came full circle, I was like, that bitch, that bitch. Especially because since then, other people have privately vented to me some ugly behavior this gal has given them. So I'm just like, dude, no. So Beth was really that first person that I can think of that I fully could let my guard down when wrestling them one-on-one.
Wow. Yeah, and that's something definitely to say, without with the three of you, and y'all how close y'all were and everything. I love that, and y'all were always so entertaining. I loved it. Always loved it.
Oh, it was so much fun when we come out and the whole thing. And here's what I love is at first we were just doing like black and white, as like she's like the good bad girl and I'm the bad girl. And then that's when we came up with the idea of like, oh my gosh, what if we did like Lake Avenue-esque sexy costumes? And then that's when we started doing like she would like there was one time I was the Queen of Hearts and then she was Alice in Wonderland. One time she was Goldilocks and I was a sexy bear. Like it was just so much fun. And I love that Beth was as into it as I was, you know what I mean? Because I'm very hyper feminine and like I get real offensive when people are like, I thought you're a vampire wearing pink. It's like, bitch, vampires wear pink, okay? Like, they're allowed to wear pink if they want to. They don't have to always be in black. Like, okay? So I'm just hyper feminine, even in my rough around the edges years. And it was just so cool because Melina is the same way. And so again, going back to finding a girl that, and it made sense like why they were friends, right? Because that common ground I had with Beth, a lot of that common ground she had with Melina. So it just made sense we were all supposed to be friends at that time. And, it was so cool to work with somebody that you gel so well with in real life. And Beth was really there for me through a lot of moments that as a young gal thrown into the wrestling world from the West Coast, you really kind of don't know what you're doing. Because when I went to OVW, that's when I realized how common the wrestling was. Like at that point, I had been in wrestling for 5 years. I did just lucha for a couple years, like before I got signed. So like I started doing stuff, but it was like West Coast stuff, and like you hear about, oh, you want to, here, I'm going to date myself. You want to send your tape out over to XYZ over there, like in Jersey or whatever. So, these places exist, but OVW showed me, especially when we'd have those house shows and go to different like areas in Kentucky or Indiana, it really showed me how present. And then not only that, how people that I was training with, it was so common knowledge to their hometowns or whatever, that wrestling, it was like that presence was there, that indie wrestling. I was jealous. I was like, dude, like I'm so effing jealous. And so that's why it annoys me when people want to have like a certain opinion of me that are my peers or former friends or coworkers. Cause it's like, some of you, man, you've been able to go to wrestling school since you're 15. So that changes the game for you, or you were born into it, or you got to go to shows when you were like 5 years old, when all I knew was on TV. I didn't even know that world existed. Like, get the F out of here. So Beth, she really gave me what that sad, broken, little lost girl needed in certain moments. And I'll always be grateful for that, And then Aaron, man, we were best friends for so freaking long. We still keep in touch. I keep in touch. Beth and I, not so much. Maybe we should keep in touch more. But it's like one of those things where my friendship with Aaron, that in the same way, but from like a guy's point of view, like I needed like that guy best friend to like have those crazy Goonie adventures with, you know what I mean? Because there's that side of me too. And I learned a lot from Aaron about not just in-ring stuff, but just how guys think and
Definitely.
how they are. And I'm really grateful for that house, living in that house. Or when I used to hang out with, there was another group I used to hang out with, and it consisted of Cliff Compton, aka Domino, Cody Rhodes, Ryback, and are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Jack Bull. Remember Jack Bull?
Yes.
Jack Bull. Shout out to Jack Bull. And so we would all kick it. We were like this other little, that was my other group of friends. And, being around both those groups of guys, whether it's my roommates or the other group, I'm so grateful because it's helped me, because I ask questions. I'd be like, how come you don't want that girl to be your girlfriend? You seem to like her. I like her. She's nice. Or, why are you cheating on this girl? Or like, whatever. I would ask questions to my guy friends all the time. And I've always been that way. So when I had these two groups of friends, I definitely asked questions, and I learned so much about how dudes think. And it's really helped me in my life and understanding men, especially in dating and all this, that, and the other. So I'm just so grateful that wrestling brought me not just these moments in the ring or moments at the show, but these moments with these people that stuck with me. And even if I don't talk to them anymore, they stayed with me. and it helped me in situations or helped me grow or helped me stay on track or give myself a little bit more credit, whatever it is. And it's like, that's why I take to heart OVW so hard. And that's why that documentary hit me so hard, or series, whatever.
Definitely. I love that you've had that camaraderie and everything, and like you said, even and it's so good. I wish there was some type of an OVW reunion type of show that someone could put on. Like that'd be so cool. Like just to have y'all all at some way and somehow do a big reunion and come back, and that'd be awesome to see.
Oh my gosh, imagine. Hello, OVW should do it.
Right, they
And
should.
they should. And it's funny because when I was watching The Wrestler, I thought the same thing. I was like, man, they should have, especially when they had, was it James Storm? He came in.
Mhm.
I was like, man, they should have, like, if they're bringing people in, they should have a show where it's like old school, early 2000s OVW,
Mhm.
whoever can be there, especially like, even they don't even have to wrestle, just do something, but like have some people wrestle that want to. But I feel like the OVW fans would so be there for it,
Mhm.
because there's people that are like you, where you were like adolescents,
Mhm.
and then there's people who were like little kids, and then you have the people that were like the parents of all these people. Fast forward to today, now you got grandma and grandpas, you got
Mhm.
parents, you got uncles and aunts. There's multiple generations that want to see
Yeah,
the OVW reunion match. Imagine.
I'd love it.
I can't.
I would love
I
it.
don't know if the wrestling world can handle that. I can. I think you can.
Oh, I
Let's do
definitely
it.
can.
Come on now, Snow. Make it happen.
Exactly. He was just on the show not too long ago, WrestleMania week, actually. So,
Oh,
um,
cool.
yes. I know we're we've went over time here, so I'd love to have you come back on at some point, or we can keep on going if you want, if you're able to.
I could do a few more minutes.
Okay. Or we can come back for another time at some point. I definitely love to get that taken care of. But just a couple other questions. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about, because he asked me to let you know he said hello. One Goose Mahoney.
I love Goose Mahoney.
So, you have any Goose stories?
You know, okay, here's the thing. I was just on the Reffing It Up podcast that has Jimmy Corderas, Brian, oh my gosh, I was gonna say Brian Pritchard.
Brian Hebner,
Brian Hebner, and
Daniel Spencer.
yeah.
He's a current OVW referee. By
Yes, he
the way.
is.
And
He
TNA.
is. Why do I always space on his name? I don't know why. I'm the worst. But I was on their podcast and I was talking about how I've always had a passion for refs. It goes back to when I first started in wrestling. There's two referees here in SoCal, Rick Knox, which some of you may know, and Patrick Hernandez. They were just amazing. And going back to that anxiety, anytime I was in the ring with them, I always knew I was going to be safe. And so I thought early on, when I was just here on the West Coast trying to get signed to WWF, brother, I always thought, okay, I'm going to go be a wrestler, and then I'm going to be a referee at the end of my career, and I'm just going to be known as a referee, and then that's how I'm going to retire. And it's because of Rick Knox and freaking, sorry, hold on a second. Sorry. And Patrick Hernandez, and what I gained through my experiences with them. So fast forward, Goose Mahoney and Ray Ramsey. They were the new, in a different way, different vibes. Patrick and Rick Knox for me. I, again, always knew I was going to be safe in there, that if something went wrong, they were going to have my back.
Mhm.
And now more than ever, I understand how important that is, because I didn't understand it at the time of that fear I had that I was carrying with me, in my career.
Mhm.
So, Goose, there's just so many stories. It'll take me forever. So I'm just want to say this. Goose was not only somebody who made me feel like he had my back in the ring, he's somebody that I know would have my back in real life.
Mhm.
And going back to the connections, I keep in touch with him, on social media, and Goose is just like a good dude. And sadly, I'm not saying this to be a bitch. In wrestling, you're surrounded by a lot of douchebags. Douchebags is unisex. It's not just guys. You're surrounded by a bunch of douchebags that are trying to take advantage of you and want something from you, one way or another.
Mhm.
Goose never made me feel that way. He knew the assignment. He was there to not only do it, but to have a good time. And then being the kind of referee that he was is like, help telling that story in the ring without taking away from the wrestler.
Mhm.
And just being a good damn ref.
Yeah.
So long live the legend that is Goose Mahoney.
Yes, yes. Something else, I really loved this backstage segment, I'd call it, where this was back in the time where Paul Burchill was doing the pirate gimmick, and you come out of one of the locker rooms, I believe it was, and you were like, you would be interviewed by Armando at the time, and he was like, I am not pregnant with Paul Burchill's baby. I absolutely loved that segment. That was one segment that I always love going back to and watching. And then the
Dude,
part where he was like,
that
he wants
here's
me,
the
he needs me.
here's the thing. At that time, I had this like on again, off again boyfriend. And during the Paul Burchill thing, that was kind of towards me having enough of this dude. And when I say he's a douche, not like abusive or anything like that. He's just a douchey wrestler guy. Like, he's a good friend to like his friends. It's just not a good guy to date. So when I was dating him, and like I said, the Paul Burchill stuff was going out, I was at my end, getting towards my end. So I really used how I wanted to yell at that boyfriend on Paul Burchill. And that Paul Burchill thing. Not that I was yelling at Paul Burchill, but that segment with like when I was yelling, or I'd be Psycho Shelly. It's like, I see you, Paul Burchill, when you go to the gym and da da da. And so that was me releasing Psycho Shelly that was building up, because this douchebag boyfriend I had, he was such a douche, man. And I was just taking it, but I kind of deserved it because beforehand, I screwed somebody over and started dating him. So it was my karma to end up with it. So I take full responsibility. I deserved the douchebag, but to a point, right? You pay your time. I paid my time. And so it felt so good to be Psycho Pirate Shelly at OVW, because it was part of my therapy of being done with that lame relationship.
There you go. Exactly. Speaking of relationships, there would be a time where you would be partnered or paired with one in a feud with The Miz and Ronnie Jonah, and you'd be paired with Seth Skyfire as his new
Yes.
girlfriend. Um, how did that come about? How did you find out about that?
I don't know. Okay, so I'm trying to think of the timeline. They already broke me and Beth up and Aaron up, right? At that time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So they tried us out. When I say they, WWE, tried us out on a loop, which means, for those of you that don't know, we went on the road for a week with SmackDown, and we went to a Raw show as well. They really loved our act and the whole nine, but they said they really saw Beth being a women's champion. They saw Aaron being in the tag team, and they didn't really know what to do with me. Just they knew they wanted to do something. So when I was kind of in limbo there, that's when at OVW, I want to say, I'm not sure, that maybe Beth had already been on Raw and was starting to like be on Raw. Don't quote me on that, I think. And then Aaron started tagging with Crazy Casey, or no,
Casey James.
Casey James, yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's when I don't remember the conversation, but I just knew I was gonna be with Seth, which I was fine with because I really like Seth. I thought he was awesome. We're friends. We keep in touch to this day. Um, we had a lot of the same interests, so I thought, sure, why not? I thought the stuff that we did together was really cute. He's another one that I really felt would have my back in the ring, which once again is really important to me. So I felt like I was a little safer with him. And Ronnie Jonah, I was friends with at that time too. And so for me, it was a lot of fun to like play off of her because we had a friendship. So it was just getting paid to play wrestler with your friends is really what's going on here. So it's like, it doesn't get better than that. So I had a lot of fun, even though it was short lived. I had a lot of fun with that and that whole love. I guess it's not a love triangle, but that whole romance, because everyone knows how it feels to like get screwed over and then you get the new person and then it's weird. So very relatable. And I thought it was a great storyline, but something like that always is going to have like an ending to it anyway. So even though I feel what had happened that broke it up, I feel like just knowing that ECW was going to start up and they were going to use me. And yeah, he kind of went on his own for a while because when I was with Seth at first, he wasn't contracted. And then they ended up signing him shortly before I ended up with ECW, if I remember the timeline correctly. So they were able to kind of separate us without me like screwing him over or anything like that.
Yeah, I remember y'all had a match. The four of you had a match at Six Flags, which was
Yes,
always
that's
one
what
of
I
my
was thinking in
favorite
my
things.
head.
I love Six Flags. I love the Six Flags shows. Do you remember that match?
I don't remember anything about that match except I could like when I was talking to you right now about like working with them or whatever. All I kept thinking about was I could see us in the ring. And I just remember like going to Seth and like holding him and making the faces. And I believe I had, was it like a bluish skirt on, I think. And here's the other thing. Fun fact. The little skirts that I would have, like little schoolgirl skirts, after a while, Ronnie was actually making those for me because I loved the print of like when I've had before. So it's fun, like a little fun fact. If
Yeah.
people knew back then that here we are beating each other up and like she made my gear.
Wow, I did not know that. I love that knowing that tidbit.
Yeah, isn't that fun? And
Yeah.
some of those skirts I wore as Ariel as well. But yeah, Ronnie
Wow.
Jonah, man, she was making me my little skirts because originally I would just buy stuff from Hot Topic, and they
Mhm.
had those little like, you know, dark little schoolgirls skirts or whatever, and I just thought they were so cute. It was the early 2000s. I still think they're cute. So yeah, dude, I gave her the print or one of my she made a not a print, but a whatever. And she just would had the pattern that she made a pattern out of one of my skirts. And so whenever I
Wow.
needed, I'm like, oh, I want this material, whatever. So dude, she totally made some of those skirts I had in those early OVW days.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Moving into ECW a little bit. So how did you find out you would be going up to the main roster to the relaunch of ECW, and being paired with Kevin Fertig, who would be known as Kevin Thorne?
Well, it's interesting because when I first got signed, I was told that I was going to go to OVW, but I wasn't going to be there that long because I was going to be in the new Brood with um, Gangrel, Jimmy Wang Yang, and Kevin Seven from OVW. And so when I got to OVW, within like a couple of days, they did those WrestleMania sweeps and they fired all of them except me. And so I was like, "Ugh, I thought I was going to be a vampire. Like this freaking sucks. No pun intended." And so almost like so that was like I want to say in July. Yeah, it was because the first full day I had in OVW or in Kentucky was on the 4th of July. So it was in July when that happened. And then I want to say July that following year, I ended up being a vampire any damn way with Kevin. Now Kevin got himself into some trouble because he got into this like gnarly bar fight, and I think that's what like got him fired. When they're doing the cuts. So I watched him for like a year try to get his job back, and he would show up to OVW, and he would just kept, and people would make fun of him. They would be like, "Oh, here comes Kevin Seven trying to get his job back." But damn it if he didn't get his job back. So what had happened is, I can't remember exactly. I just remember it was after an OVW taping, I think, or it was Dreamer came to one of our classes. It was one of the two. I just remember all of us like kind of dispersing from the meeting, and then Dreamer pulled me aside and said that I was going to be a tarot card reader for the new ECW, and then I'm going to get bit, and then I'm going to become a vampire with Kevin. And that's when I almost took a bump. I'm thinking he got his job back. He got his job back. All right. And so I just love that. And it goes back to that moment I had with that pay-per-view in Anaheim that Bubba tweeted out or posted. I was meant to be in WWE, like as a vampire. Like, yes, like it got taken from me once, but it was like it wasn't time yet. It was supposed to be like the way it happened, you know? And so, and I think it still would have been awesome if the original plan had happened, but it wouldn't have been Kevin Thorne and Ariel. You know what I mean? And I just think it just was a whole, no disrespect. I mean, it would have been awesome to work in a WWE environment with Gangrel. And I love Jimmy Wayne Yang. So that could have been really awesome, but it wouldn't have been what Kevin and I made it, you know? And it would have lost a little bit of its Zazazoo, and that would have been sad.
Right, exactly. One of the matches that y'all had was with someone else who is actually an alumni of the show, who was on ECW as well. Mike Knox and Kelly taking on you and Kevin Thorne at December to Dismember. What was that like?
First of all, I met Barbie at OVW when she first got recruited, and immediately I liked her. I immediately just liked her. When ECW was first starting, we'd go on the road together, so we developed our friendship. Even though she was limited because she wasn't a wrestler at the time, I was excited to work with her because I knew Barbie knew how to do business. You know what I mean? Who cares if she's not a wrestler? And then point in case, that match, even though she didn't do much because she's inexperienced, her facials, my goodness, like she made it so real. Like, whatever. So I always saw that in Barbie, like that she like has a lot to bring to the table just because she's not a trained wrestler yet. So she'll get there. Look at Trish. Like, come on. So anyway, so I was really excited to just go in there, and like the whole storyline I thought was awesome to be a part of, especially because of my history and what wrestling did for me, took me away from that guy. So for me, it was deep. Especially because even though I was Ariel, me and Kevin Thorne's relationship was just fine. He treats me just fine, even though we're the bad guys. You know what I mean? So it was like, and you know that dude for sure was watching. And here's the thing. I'm not saying it like a question. I literally know because I had interactions with him that he was watching. So now more than ever, I'm so glad that I was able to be a part of that storyline because of my whole damn connection. And that asshole was watching, man. And you know the thoughts that he was probably thinking. And there's Shelly. I told her she was never going to be on there, and there she is, and looking like that. So that was a good like F you to that piece of shit boyfriend.
Yes.
With all due respect, because here's the thing, he's a piece of shit because he's a piece of shit and things happen. I'm not excusing it, so I'm not saying it to throw negative energy. It's just matter of fact. And I don't know. It's just, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole thing. And I'm so, like I said, grateful that wrestling was able to give me what it did to get away from that man. And so that match, and even though my feud with Barbie didn't go so long, it really meant so much to me in so many different ways. And I'll never forget like the way it felt in that ring, just owning my energy, and nothing else mattered except what I was feeling, you know?
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
feel that working with Beth and Aaron and working with freaking Paul Heyman, even though we butted heads for a while, working with Al Snow and working with all the people that we did good business with, freaking Danny Davis himself, you know, like all these different people that were put in my path. It's like it prepared me all for the big show, you know what I mean? And continue to. And so again, this is why OVW is so near and dear to my heart.
It is. It is. Then Detroit, Michigan, WrestleMania 23. You got to be the valet for the New Breed in ECW against the ECW originals. What was that moment like?
It was okay. It felt like a TV taping because I was having backstage issues with Batista.
Mhm.
So it really put a damper on the day for me. I felt more fancy that at the time my sister, she was in a senior, I think, in high school. So I felt more good about, like, I felt fancy that I was able to fly her there and like have her there for WrestleMania weekend, rubbing elbows with wrestling elite. The WrestleMania party was really awesome. That was like the private party with like just the wrestlers and stuff like that. So it's more like the experience outside of the ring. I'm not saying that inside of the ring wasn't good. It just wasn't my WrestleMania moment. It was just like sometimes people like I forget how many people it was, but they're like, "How did it feel?" And it was like, it didn't matter like that many people. Like I was so distracted, and I was just like, "Oh, can I just do my job? Like, what's going on over here?" And like whatever. So I just kind of clocked in, clocked out. Not that I wasn't present in the moment, but nothing really stood out to me about it except knowing that my sister was in like the VIP box, and that made me feel really good because my sister and my grandma were the only people that ever believed me when I said I was going to be a wrestler.
Oh, that's
So
very
it
special.
so it meant a lot to me to have
Definitely.
her, like I said, there, and knowing that she was up there watching me do the damn thing.
Definitely. Exactly. That's what it's all about. For real. It's all about your family and those who have stayed behind you from the beginning. So that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Transitioning over really quickly to TNA. So you were part of the valet for LAX as Salinas, um, and for Homicide and Hernandez, as well as Hector Guerrero, the legendary Hector Guerrero. What was that like working with them?
You know, I was so heartbroken over how things went down in WWE and how I got fired that, first of all, and then after I tell you this story, or after this part, I gotta go. But so you know the Louisville Athletic Club?
Yes.
Okay, so I used to work out there. All the wrestlers did, and they have this a wall, and on the cardio wall they have all these TVs, and then you can plug in your headphones and push what number TV you want to hear the audio. Well, that's how I got familiar with TNA because I would watch them while I do my cardio, and when I would see LAX come out, I was like, dude, they look like my cousins. I can totally do that. If something ever happened with me in WWE, I could see myself with these guys. And at the time, the wrestler formerly known as Jesus in WWE, Aaron Aguilera, he was with them. And so Aaron and I, or Aaron, Aaron Aguilera, he is somebody that I knew from SoCal and the SoCal scene. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to like work with him. I felt a little comfortable. Conan, it's not like I was BFF with him, but I was familiar with him from my lucha days and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so I thought I could feel comfortable because I didn't know Homicide or Hernandez, but I knew I can give them something extra, that group. I was like, they're missing something and I can give it to them. So I would watch them, and like a psycho, I would envision in my head walking out with them, how I would be, and da 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 da. That's why when I stepped into Selena's, it was without skipping a beat, because before I even knew I was going to be out of job, there was just something in me that was like, I could do that. Like, yeah. And I would do it like this, and I'd be all on the camera. And so I was already practicing, not knowing what was going to happen many months later. So when it happened, it was just, I can't remember. I don't remember Hector being there like from day one. I mean, he was there from the beginning, but maybe not day one. But as soon as I like slid into character with Homicide and Hernandez, I had fun, and I needed that because I always equate WWE was like my first love, and then TNA was my rebound.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make my first love jealous. So Homicide and Hernandez helped me make them jealous by doing an awesome job together and having fun. And because this is no disrespect, this is just I'm sure things are different now, but back then it was kind of looked at as TNA, because TNA was not then what it is now, like mainstream wise and all that. So at WWE, TNA was kind of looked at kind of like not taken serious, like, oh, if you get let go, you just kind of go there for a little bit and then like you come back, whatever. That was like the thing. So when I went from that WWE locker room to TNA locker room, not that I necessarily had that mindset, but I knew that was the general mindset. So I kind of didn't take it serious in the sense of like, I wasn't like, oh, I better be okay over. Dude, I was medicating in the parking lot. I was, just being crazy. Like whatever. I wasn't taking it like, I wasn't acting like I was walking on eggshells. I just did whatever the F I wanted. And no one really said too much to me. So there you go. And so for me, going back to the equating it to like a relationship, it was like I was making my ex jealous, having a good time, but ignoring the pain and filling it with like toxic behaviors, like over drinking, chasing unavailable boys around. Like, no, just getting myself into trouble. So to me, it was what I needed to do to get through that pain because I didn't know what else to do. And it sucked that I quit because I didn't want to quit, but they weren't paying me very well. And long story short, I was supposed to do a movie, independent film, and doing that film was going to allow me to pay my back rent and then my current rent so I didn't get kicked out of the place I was living at the time. So when I explained that to TNA, because it was started on a Monday, they had a pay-per-view that weekend. TNA did in Canada. So I knew I couldn't make it back in time. So I said, look, or for TV. So I said, look, what if at the pay-per-view I go through a table because freaking Homicide and Hernandez were going against the Dudleys, full circle, right? I said, what if I go through the table, it takes me out of TV for a week, let me go do this film, and then I'll come back. And then they said, well, why don't you just come to Canada and we'll see what happens. Like, we'll talk about it. And I took it as, you just want me to go to Canada, and then that's just it. And then after that, my next plane ticket's to Florida to go do the TV tapings. I'm not going to do that. So I said, well, I quit. And so that's how I quit. So I don't know if Homicide and Hernandez have ever held any resentment towards me, because it's not like I was discussing this stuff with them. But so sorry if that was ever been the case to those dudes. It wasn't. And there's been times I've regretted it and wish I just didn't do the film and blew it off and let them figure out who their main actress was going to be and just kept my job. But it just wasn't supposed to happen. So it's just one of those things where people always ask me, what was better, TNA or WWE, Ariel or Selena's? Now that I gave you, even though it seemed long, the short version, there's no comparison because who I was at both times was completely a different version of myself. So I experienced those characters in a different way that is uncomparable, you know? But working with Hector, I wonder if he has an opinion on me because there was a time where we went to go, I think it was Vince Russo was driving us to the bad part of the neighborhood to do a promo. I was drinking Malibu rum out of the flask.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I got so drunk. I don't even I gotta look up that promo. I probably was just real annoying. And I just remember on the ride back, I started passing out in the car. And I just remember hearing Hector go, oh no, this is bad. So if Hector Guerrero has an opinion on me, I deserve it because I would too, I guess. But I was just going through it, man. I was going through it and trying to do the best I could. And so yeah, dude. So that's like it's because Hector, if I remembering things correctly, I was always closer to Homicide than Hernandez, even though I felt a friendship and everything with Hernandez. But I always feel like Hernandez was more the kind of middle person for Hector. Like I always remember like me, Homicide, and then and Hernandez, and then Hernandez would be like, well, Hector said this, or Hector wants to da 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 da. And like Hector, me being around him, I only remember being around him when we were like going over things and preparing. So when it's like outside of that, not so much. And then we were like little jokesters backstage too, which I really loved because I needed that at that time, being so hurt over everything. And it was just so awesome. Like we would just joke around. Christian Cage, we used to call him Palitos. And so we go by him and we go, Palito, Palito. So like pretty much the characters you saw us be, like the comedy stuff at LAX was really just us.
No.
And we would really rib other people that other people would be scared to rib because they're like named people, but we just didn't care because we were having fun. And the ones we were ribbing, they were having fun too. So TNA for me, that's when I say I didn't take it that serious. I was just having fun in my new little relationship, trying to make it work, see how it fits in my life because I didn't really know what was going on. And you know, it was an awesome experience, especially a lot of the girls in the knockouts division I had already known one way, shape, or form, but I felt I got to get closer to those girls I already was like cool with or had a friendship with because of the knockouts division. So I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm glad that I was a part of LAX, and I'm sad I never got to go through that table. But it's okay. And whatever Homicide and Hernandez got going on in their life, I just always send them positive vibes. Same thing for Kevin Thorne.
Yes, definitely. Just real quick before you go, can you share where fans can find you on social media? Just because I want to respect you on that.
Absolutely. Nice and easy. If you just go to shellymartinez.net/links, it's all there. My YouTube channel, my Twitch, my secret society, my social medias, it's all there. And newsflash, most of it is either Shelly from Cali or Shelly from Cali, the number 4. So there you go. But just go to shellymartinez.net/links.
All right, fans, definitely go check out Shelly on all of her social media. And Shelly, definitely, it's been a great time having you on the Final Count Spotlight, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, and you have a great rest of your evening. Fans, with that being said, we will see you down the road.